Tak vítám vás na 5. strojTALKu. Než budu pokračovat úvodem a přivítáním našeho přednášejícího, tak bych chtěl připomenout, že za 14 dní tady budeme mít další strojTALK. Bude tady Radek Vrána z One 3D. Předpokládám, že téma bude kový 3D tisk, ale přiznám se, že teďka úplně nevím, jak přesně to téma je pojmenované. Každopádně budeme rádi, když přijdete i tady na tuto akci. So, this presentation will be in English, or as Tanguy always says, in French, if you like.
But English is okay.
I guess that you prefer English as usual. I know Tanguy from, I would say, like 5 or more years.
Six years, I think, yes.
Wow. You know better. And we met in the occasion that there was the cooperation between our university and the Honeywell. And I know Tanguy is the super enthusiastic professional who always like to share his experience with, I must say, very rich professional past. And I always tend to bring those people like him to share experience with you, because if it's not at least fresh air to the academic environment, then it means a lot for the students also to see the really professionals who works with industry and who can bring experience from the, let's say, real life. So I would not speak more, because I think that what Tanguy will show you that will explain a lot, and I believe that he also can better express everything about him. So, Tanguy Prevot.
Hello. So yes, my name is Tanguy. Let's see if this works. Yes, so quickly about me. It started 50 years ago in Brussels, Belgium. And then I've been a bit around in Europe. These are where I studied and where I worked. I mentioned that because today we're going to talk about creative problem solving, and I just wanted to illustrate that I have put myself in a few situations that required creative problem solving, and not necessarily always design, but just being challenged by the situation where, you know, when things happen that you did not expect because you didn't know that that happens when you change country. And the cartoon there is currently one of the most famous Belgian cartoons. It says, if you don't know where you're going, go there anyway, and once you're there, ask where you are. And that's, I think it suits me somehow, my path, even if actually for the last 10 years I've been here in Brno, which is like my record for stability geographically. So I'm an industrial designer. That means I do 3D physical things, but I've done, as you can see, some automotive stuff and also some other stuff, including dog food packaging. So, or even urinals or all sorts of things. It doesn't really matter. The tools are always the same. So today we're going to talk about practical creativity. So as always, my goal is to make it interesting, entertaining, inspiring. And so I hope at some point there will be something that will surprise you through the presentation, and that's totally okay. That's my goal. So the agenda, quickly. I'm going to start with reviewing some experiments. The first one is definitely not something I invented. It is something that is just very interesting. And I'm going to look at some insights we can draw from that. The second experiment is something I have not invented, but I've used. Then we're going to look at a few myths and misconceptions on the topic of creativity. Especially, I think those misconceptions are very strong among people who think they are not creative. We're going to have a look at some well-known tools, like the tools that design and engineering teams use in their processes to generate creative ideas, and all of them have good sides and bad sides, so we're going to look at that. David and Tomasz asked me to bring the topic of artificial intelligence, so that's new for me too. But so we'll talk briefly about that. Obviously, in the time we have, it's going to be brief, like it's not going to be thorough. And then the magic wand is just something I bring up as basically, I think, the things that many people don't think of, and that is actually a really great tool to get things moving. So the first experiments, first check everybody understands, hears me, sees what's going on, right? Everything's OK? Cool. So the experiments, this is a screenshot from a TED talk. If you Google that guy, or the build a tower, build a team. So the data I'm going to show now comes from him, and he took that from other people and from his own experience. This is not to my credit. I call it the spaghetti challenge. He calls it the marshmallow challenge. It's typically used for team building. You make teams of 4 people. You give them some spaghetti, some tape, some strings, and a marshmallow. And you give them 18 minutes, and you tell them, OK, build the highest possible structure with the whatever materials we have given you. And the marshmallow has to be as high as possible, and we measure the distance from the table to the marshmallow, right? That sounds like an easy exercise. It's entertaining. It's good for team building. But it's also an interesting thing to observe in terms of problem solving. So what usually happens, so you have the 18 minutes, and the way it works is that most groups operate like this. They spend about 2.5 minutes introducing themselves and, social, settling kind of thing, what's going on, what are we here for. Then they spend another 3 minutes something planning and like sketching how they're going to do, or deciding who's going to do what. You cut the tape, I cut the string, all that kind of stuff that you're still not building anything, right? And then they spend a good 10 minutes actually building their tower. And when they're done, no, not when they're done. When the moderator tells them, watch out, just 2 minutes left or just 1 minute left, what they do is take the marshmallow and ta-da, they put it on and they are super proud, everything is fine. Or the whole thing falls because the marshmallow is heavier than you think and they haven't achieved anything. Or if they're lucky, it collapses, but not completely, so the marshmallow is still like 2 inches from the table. And that's what happens to a lot of people. So let's have a look at what happens and to how many people. So we have typically, like on average, in the person who did that TED talk, Tom Wuyets, he did dozens and dozens of those sessions. So you have 4 teams out of 10 that just don't achieve anything. And the best teams usually are around 20 inches, 50 centimeters high for the tower. I've done that exercise without knowing it. So as a team building thing, I don't remember if it was a decade ago or more because it was not at Honeywell. Oh yeah, by the way, today I'm not talking in the name of Honeywell, right? So if I say something that they don't like, it's my problem. It's okay. So the 50 centimeters, I remember walking out of there thinking, so the lesson is don't be too ambitious, because if you try a meter and then you fail, and the team that did 40 centimeters just won, right? So sometimes ambition has to be a bit calibrated to the context. But so this is basically the numbers that they achieve, but what's interesting is to see who succeeds more often and who succeeds less often. So who delivers on that exercise? So he gave me the average, we said, is 20 inches. He talks about business school students, lawyers, kindergarten kids, so they're like 4 or 5 years old, architects and engineers, everybody in the room feels great, CEOs, and an interesting thing is CEOs with executive admin. We're going to have a closer look at those that are framed in red now. So let's observe. Observation is super important in problem solving, right? So business school students, they have a plan, right? They are taught that you have to have a plan and a strategy, and you're going to, think a lot and establish all the resources and do the thing. And then, as I said, 4 times out of 10, it fails. The kids, they don't even know their names. Like, they don't introduce each other. They don't care who's 4 and who's 5 years old, and, you know, they just don't. And they just get going. So what's interesting with the kids is that by iterating with their prototypes, and so they do a thing and oops, it doesn't work. So they fix it, oops, it doesn't work. They adjust it, oops, it doesn't work. So at the end, you have a thing that is not symmetrical, that has, you know, bits of tape that don't need to be there, but they are from the previous version. They're let's say, scars in the design. But the thing stands. They had fun the whole time. Oh, by the way, they were not competing, right? They were playing. So that's also an important difference. They were having fun. Trial and error is a good old technique. It's time-consuming if you keep going forever. If you frame your time as, I have 18 minutes to try, just trial and error just gives statistically better results than spending, you know, 6 minutes thinking and then 10 minutes trying to execute, because actually you can never know for sure that your plan is right. Okay. So then let's have a look at the architects and engineers in the room. That's easy. You guys know how to do. So of course, architects win those competitions because they studied that for, what, 5 years at least, and then they worked. So that's cheating, in my opinion. But specialized skills, you know, knowing what you're doing is very helpful in problem solving. The interesting thing here is the CEOs with the executive admin. So if you put 4 CEOs in a team, you get above average results. We talk about, like, he talks about CEOs from like Fortune 500 companies in US, right? So like not CEO of the local startup, like some. But if you take 3 of those CEOs and you put an executive admin, then the results get better. And it's all about getting consensus, managing the ego battle during the process, making sure decisions are made instead of just arguing. Like, don't do no disrespect to the CEOs. I don't have the skills to become a CEO, so, you know, I say that in full respect. But the point of facilitation and communication and maybe a bit of humility is really an interesting point to take in problem solving. So this is about problem solving. Another experiment, this one I've done, this is a video of actually a group of Honeywell engineers. And so I told them, okay, you all get a page of A4 paper and you have 5 minutes to make an aircraft. The trick is that I'm not going to throw it. First of all, they don't have the privilege of driving their aircraft, right? I'm the one. So the thing is, I told them I'm going to hold it like this, and I'm going to drop it, and we're going to check how many seconds it takes to hit the ground, and the slower, the better. So what we saw is that because there was no aerospace engineer in the room, they all understood quickly that trial and error was probably the right thing to do because they had no domain knowledge. So they tried stuff. They had fun. I was happy about that. They were like kids playing and not competing. There was a lot of noise in the room. They were talking, laughing, you know, having a lot of communication. That was great. And they did some testing. So, however, what went wrong? With what went wrong, I just mean that my thing won the competition. So they can do better. And what went wrong is that they started very carefully. So the radical ideas came late. And ideally, in problem solving, you should start with the radical stuff when you have time to fix it after if it fails, right? Because if you go safe at the beginning, and that is not good enough or doesn't work well enough, and then you start getting a bit desperate, so you dare more stuff, but you have less and less time to test it and fix it later if it goes wrong. So not radical enough at the beginning. That's one thing. They tested, but they were, most of them, sitting at the table and testing it like this. So what is a table? 72 centimeters. But I told them I'm going to hold it like this. And so the piece of paper might behave in one way in the first half meter, but then behave another way for the remaining. I was standing on the table, right? So we got surprises there. And they thought they had to make something that moves slowly. I said it has to fall slowly. So in theory, if you are able to make a thing that spins super fast and stays at the ceiling for 2 hours, you won. It doesn't need to be in slow motion. Like falling slowly, it means just that the vertical measurement of the movement is slow. The rest, that's your problem, right? So what have we learned so far from those things? About problem solving. Hands-on interaction by far outperforms overthinking, right? So thinking is good, but just only thinking is not leading you anywhere. Knowing what you're doing, domain knowledge, specialized skills, definitely works if you or someone in the team is able to manage the communication and so have all those experts get to a consensus that works. And then correctly framing the problem is crucial. There I'm talking about moving slowly or falling slowly. We're still not talking about creativity right now. We're talking about problem solving. So about creativity, Graham Wallace, 100 years ago, came up with this theory on how creative work is happening. He based his work on like the big discoveries or inventions, right? So people like Darwin, Tesla, these kind of people. So not the immediate now, let's have an idea kind of thing. And he said, there is a phase of preparation. That's the specialized skills, right? The domain knowledge, or you spending 5 years here to learn the fundamental domain knowledge that you need to have. That's the preparation, acquiring knowledge. Then there is a phase of incubation where you allow yourself to let it sink in your head and to mature in the back of your head. Not just, I learned something today and tomorrow I'm a genius. It's not how it works. The illumination moment it's literally the moment where aha, now I know. By the way, that is usually happening in the shower or when you're having a walk in the forest or literally at the toilet. Very often when you are falling asleep, basically when your brain stops being focused on something and your brain is allowing itself to mix things up. And then you have verification, which is your career, trying to verify your brilliant idea, right? All the testing, all the development, and the refinement. So, I just said, we can match the specialized skilled idea with the preparation. You need to be prepared. Incubation is a matter of mindset. We'll spend the rest of the time talking about those things, mindset and awareness. And then hands-on interaction fits into the verification. About awareness, what I mean is that all of you have those ideas, right? You go to bed and then you kind of start drowsing and you have an idea and tomorrow you don't remember that you had that idea. Because you're not paying attention to that. Some of you, probably. I'm the kind of guy who just gets out of bed, takes a pen, writes the 3-4 keywords so that tomorrow I remember that this came to my mind that I need to ask the guy who knows better if it makes sense, right? Literally taking notes of what you're doing. You should constantly have your own little fly on the ceiling with a direct connection to your brain, and that fly is looking at you, behaving and thinking and taking notes, and then reminding you that this was in your head yesterday, this is going on, this is how you react in that situation. And so then you are aware of when you have those aha moments, and you don't forget them, and you act on them with the verification. So in this room, we certainly have a whole bunch of specialized skills, I hope. And I'm quite sure you guys are working hard on verification and implementing your thoughts. So that's great. The question is, do you have all the right mindset and the level of awareness I'm talking about? Let's go through this. I'm sure you know a few tools on how to have ideas, how to generate ideas. I don't know if I'll talk about all the tools you know, certainly not, because I have made a narrow selection of the things I wanted to talk about. So these are a few of the tools that exist out there. Of course, the first one is last-minute panic. That's not helpful, right? So the myth, the legend, is that pressure triggers creativity. Let's put them under pressure. Let's give them 5 minutes to make an aircraft. Who did that? So pressure triggers creativity. Obviously, I don't think so. I think pressure unleashes creativity. What it does to you is that it's forcing you to skip the overthinking. It's forcing you to take risks and just go for it. It removes fear, but it does not generate creativity. That's not the same thing, right? So it's really important you understand that. What that means, it means that creativity is there. You don't need to learn creativity. You don't need to acquire creativity. You were born creative. Things in life make you fit in frames, follow templates, and lock that creativity into some limiters. And last minute panic helps you remove those locks and those limits. It reveals something that you already have. You are creative. So just use it. And we will talk about last-minute panic that you can do on purpose. Like when I give 5 minutes to a team to do something, or 18 minutes to build a tower in spaghettis, that is simulating last-minute panic, but on time, right? So another myth, drugs and rock and roll, and creative people, let's destroy everything, let's be crazy, right? Do I look crazy to you? Maybe, okay. Definitely not drugs. I mean, rock and roll, why not? If music puts you in the flow, like whatever music you like, I don't mind. But drugs, remember what we just said about problem solving, right? Domain knowledge is really helpful. So if you're stoned, you know better than someone who did not spend 5 years at university. So forget that. Alcohol, forget that. Even I would say sleep deprivation, really bad idea. You need your cognitive skills to be at the top. So be healthy, be in great shape, sleep as much as you can, drink a lot of water without the hops and the weed, just water. Take care of yourselves. That's a great tool for being creative. Because I'm talking about practical creativity. If you want to reinvent rock and roll or be an artist, that's your thing, right? But if we talk about engineering or industrial design or design and this kind of problem solving, take care of your health. Now, I was just mentioning artists. Creative people are all artists, right? And then you have those who say, oh, I'm not an artist, so I am not a creative, so I don't have ideas, right? I'm not an artist either. So being creative, it means having ideas to solve a problem. Being an artist, that means solve your own problem, eventually with new ideas. But there are artists who spend their life trying to master an old technique, right? So it doesn't need to be creative or new. And if they do that, it's because they try to do something for themselves, right? So you can be an artist and you can be a creative designer or engineer, probably not the same minute, maybe the same day, right? There's nobody's wrong in here. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it's not the same mindset and it's not the same goals. So if you don't feel like an artist, you're allowed to be creative. Creative people are messy. We know that, right? Don't you think? All the creatives are completely disorganized, messy people. We know that. So messy is creative, but spelling matters, right? So humor is also a creative tool. So that's a really important thing. And actually, Messi, the football player, fits in that. Creative people intentionally, and the students who've had me before in class have heard that word before, everything has to be intentional. Creative people intentionally keep everything top of mind. So the stereotype of the mad scientist that has those piles of papers, tons of documents all over the place on the table, that gives the feeling that this is a messy person. In my eyes, it's someone who has a desk like mine. So that's someone who knows that those reports on the left have something in common with those studies on the right. He just doesn't know yet what's the link, right? So he keeps them visible to make the link. Personally, if I put something in a sleeve, in a folder, the folder in a shelf, that's the same as physically forgetting it. Because I make the decision that I put it away. And I built my career, 7 countries, on keeping everything top of mind. So I'm constantly, the students know that, I'm constantly, oh yeah, in the 90s, this happened, and I did that, and it went wrong, right? And then in 2005, and then I keep it all top of mind because that's how I connect the dots. If I put it in an archive, I can't connect those dots. And for me, creative problem solving, many times, it's just about finding connections between things that are right there in front of you. We're not all inventing the world, inventing the wheel every day, right? We're just putting things in common. If you are in corporate, a super easy trick to impress everybody with innovation, you look at the different divisions of the corporate, and you connect them. There's always something in between. Oh, that guy makes helmets. Oh, and that guy makes hearing protection. Huh. Guess what? They both are on the head. There must be something to do there. So connect the things. Keep everything open in your mind. Everything can be connected, compared, evaluated, and everything can be an inspiration for another thing. So far we know creativity is not a talent. It's not something that some people have and some people don't. You were all born with it. We all have it. So we can use it. To use it, we need to acknowledge that we have it, that it belongs to us, and we need to engage with it. We need to be intentional with it. You can even be systematic at applying certain tricks, and you're going to get somewhere. There is no border or limit. You should go vertically, horizontally across all sorts of metrics, all sorts of organization, all sorts of topics. There will be things that work together. And it's not there to destroy things, right? Creativity is not about being a troublemaker. Sometimes it happens. Disruption, by the way, a lot of marketing people use disruption as a positive word. Like, oh, wow, let's disrupt the market. Be careful with that one, though, because you can disrupt a lot of things without being productive or constructive, right? So if bringing something new and positive happens to have as a side effect that something else collapses and disappears, that's history, that's evolution. Destroying everything just for fun, okay? You're not teenagers anymore, so I think you can do better. Okay, now, everybody, are we still okay, or someone already feels like you have a strong disagreement with me? Nobody? Wow. Okay, few known tools. Yeah, I consider that as a creative tool. 5 whys. And I just love this sciatica. The pain is in your leg, the problem is in your back. Do not confuse problem with symptom, because you're going to spend your time putting bandages on wooden legs, right? It's totally useless to deal with symptoms. I'm not talking about medicine. Let's not argue. That's maybe. But again, in design or engineering, you are solving problems. Are you sure that what you are looking at is the problem? Or is it just a symptom? Happened to me, I was designing a respirator, like a reusable respirator. And we, of course, had plenty of prototypes. And I was asking people to test it and give me the comments. And then there was pain point on the top of the nose, very common problem. It was hurting there. But I had already made it as soft and thin as I possibly could with the materials we were going to use. So I was wondering, how am I going to make, what do I need to change so that I don't have so much pressure here? And the solution was to change the chin area. Okay, so the pain is right here, the solution is here. The pain is in the leg, and the solution is here. That's a super important concept. And you can find that by why. This is happening, why? This is happening, why? And then you actually get to what's really happening and what you can solve. Experience outcome, that's something that gives a headache to the students when I bring that in the workshops. The point being, again, thinking in terms of solution is not the most creative thing to do. Eventually, you will have a solution. You will reach that point of solving the problem. But when you tackle the problem at first, someone gives you a brief, someone tells you we have this problem. What is useful is to ask yourself what you're really trying to achieve. So what's the end result in terms of, in this case, user experience, because that's what I'm doing in my career. So, don't say we need to make this lighter. Maybe we need to make this person able to carry it with one hand effortlessly. Like you need to have that kind of vision, and then maybe lighter is the solution. But if the brief says, make it lighter, you just locked a whole bunch of doors. You have already avoided opportunities. So target the most desirable outcome. I will talk again about the difference between outcome and output. It's very important to understand that difference. The elephant in the room, of course, brainstorming, when we talk about creativity tools. The problem, I have a lot of problems with brainstorming. I don't do brainstorming. The reason is I don't have a team. That's a good start. You'd need 4, 5, 6 people. You'd need 4, 5, 6 people who know how to do brainstorming properly. The problem with it is that we're not supposed to interrupt each other in a storm. So I have issues with the tool in itself. And also I have issues with the fact that very often we have a problem and then someone goes, oh, let's go brainstorm that. What they mean is sit in a room and have a conversation. Okay? And that's very useful. People with domain knowledge sitting calmly in a room and having a conversation on what's going on, what's the problem, what can we do about it, who do we need to involve, that's productive. Pretending that we create a brainstorm and we have not enough people in the room or too many people in the room and they are not trained and they don't know how to behave. They think that, oh, now it's a brainstorming. I can go crazy. Hey, and the teenager comes back. I'm not a fan of that. One tool I do use with the students and at work is the creative matrix. So it's basically a brainstorming for introverts. It's the written version of brainstorming. So you have your big whiteboard. You put your matrix where you have your problems or like experience outcomes, so the things you try to achieve. You have the personas or the people that you are targeting, the different kind of people who have those kind of problems to solve. And you ask the group, just like in a brainstorming, to generate as many ideas as they can, as fast as they can, but they write it on a Post-it with a big fat marker. So that means they write it in 3, 4 words max, because there's no space. Or they make a pictogram, some kind of sketch, some symbol, whatever. They communicate the idea on a Post-it. They put that Post-it in the right category on the board. And what is great about that is that you can have 5 people talking at the same time, because they are not talking, they're just sticking a Post-it. And you can have people reading each other's Post-it, reacting, disagreeing, or reinforcing the idea with more parameters or more ideas to it. So that's something that is, I think, very helpful in the way, especially for people who are not particularly trained at this, is the reaction thing. People are much better at seeing what they don't like than at saying what they like. Typically, if you work in a design agency and you have the customer, typically a marketing person, an offering manager, comes and says, we want you to design this. And then you make 3 concepts, and I don't like that, I don't like that, I don't like that. So you make 3 more, and then 3 more, and then 3 more. And they just know that they don't like what you're showing, but they're not able to express clearly what they actually really have as a vision. So the domain knowledge and the conversations and so on, the facilitation there is much more important than generating concepts, right? But reacting is something people are good at doing. So you have a group of people having ideas in the room, reacting to what they just saw the other guy just placed. You actually help them have those ideas. Crazy 8. So that's last-minute panic full on. It gives you 8 minutes to have 8 proposals of solution to a problem statement. So you have a problem statement, and I don't know if you've tried, but to find right now, immediately, in 8 minutes, 8 solutions for any problem, it's not easy. 3, that's easy. 4, 5, fine. 6, challenging. The 8th, I struggle. What it does is that, of course, it does the same thing as the other tools, right? The 8th, you go crazy because you've already written all the things that made sense to you. So you, just for the sake of filling the 7th and 8th, you say things that you don't even believe, right? But at least what the tool is doing is breaking those locks. They don't make, those 7 and 8, they don't make sense to you, to your locks, but the tool is forcing you to say it so that later, as a team, you look at the 8 answers of all the team members and you have something to discuss, and you bring a topic that maybe would have remained silent if you had not forced people to go beyond their locks. You clearly don't have time to overthink anything in that tool. The problem, of course, is that this is not about thoroughly solving a problem, right? It's just about having a splash idea and work from that. Around the box, you know, they all say thinking out of the box. I say it depends on how big your box is. So what I like is to think like a system engineer, right? This is an example. I know most of you are too young, except those who had workshops with me, they've seen the example. But these are DVD players. The first DVD players had a display. Does that shock anyone? It should, because they were plugged into a TV, right? I mean, that's a DVD player. So if you are asked to design a DVD player, zoom out, what else is in that context? What else can I use from that context? And if I can use a huge plasma TV as a display for whatever function, why would I put a 2-inch LCD thing on a DVD player? That sounds obvious here, but that can be very useful in plenty of environments, right? If you are, the other example I usually give is a surgery room. In the surgery room, you have plenty of machinery, different types of monitoring, and things that are dispensing drugs and so on, a lot of machinery. And if each of those machines had its own TV display, like monitor, the thing becomes like that art, right? Like a shop of TVs. So don't do that. Like, make sure your device is compatible with the room, compatible with the big monitoring screens of the room, and use those assets. The property in question, this is really good tool. So it's about framing the problem and you know, challenging the team by the way you present the problem. And this is a very simple example. How can we win the race when our cars are not faster than anyone else's? So by the way, there is a around the box in there, right? You are a company trying to make racing cars and you want to win a race. The most, let's say, spontaneous and common reaction is, let's make fast cars, right? Of course. But they need to be faster than the others. They were clever enough to admit that they weren't quite sure how to make their cars significantly faster than the others. They zoomed out. They knew that the goal is not to make a fast car. The goal is to win the race. And in the race, there is driving and there is pit stops. And there is X minutes in a 24-hour race of fueling. So if you can skip 1 or 2 pit stops, those few minutes make the difference and you win. So it's a good exercise to try to frame your problem like this. A big, bold ambition, win the 24-hour race of Le Mans. That's ambitious. With something that seems like completely like the deal breaker, right? Like without having cars that are faster than the others. That's forcing you to explore and to go find ideas that maybe you will not use later. But it's like stretching exercise for your brain. And that's I think, a great tool. So we know that those tools usually try to have you focused on the target. I talked about outcome, about the bigger purpose of winning the race instead of making a car faster. So the target, keep that in mind. Of course, the tools require domain knowledge. Yeah, if you try to do a brainstorming about how to build a bridge with people who have no idea about that, maybe they will propose things that don't make any sense at all, and that's going to be a waste of time, right? Those tools usually are collaborative tools. Even the Crazy 8, you do it alone at your table, but then it only makes sense if you have a conversation with 2 or 3 other people who did the same exercise and challenge each other and like make it alive. They all make you go for more than one solution because, again, the first idea you have is all in your locks. And we want to break those locks, and we want to have you go beyond and stretch beyond. So we force you to have quantity because from quantity, we will generate quality. Go beyond the obvious, simulate last-minute panic, but on time. Leverage the context, and make us accept an unlikely hypothesis as a way forward. It is very, very common that people just say, oh, but it cannot be that way. You start expressing an idea, and it cannot be that way. Because the hypothesis sounds crazy. And that's it. End of the conversation. No more ideas coming. If you can force yourself to accept the crazy hypothesis and try digging, you get better. Now, the dangerous topic, artificial intelligence. So, we don't have time to go through all the things that there is to say about artificial intelligence. There's plenty of good and plenty of bad and plenty of everything. So I decided to frame it my way, and then we'll see where that leads us. There is a very, 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 very important concept. It's the difference between doing something and getting it done. When a teacher asks you to write an essay in a Word document, 5,000 words, on a certain topic, what does he try to do? Anybody? Are you sure he tries to increase his collection of essays? The guy's been teaching for 20 years. How many of those documents do you think he has? Is that his goal? I think his goal is to make you think, search, discuss it together, hesitate, go find out, correct it, adjust it, hit the fan, have pain, sweat on it, achieve something and feel good about it. That's the difference between getting it done and doing it. Getting it done is having a Word document with 5,000 words that ChatGPT created. Doing it is the outcome. So the process of trying and achieving is the important part. I have the same in corporate, right? They want to be sure we do the job properly. That's commendable. So we have a system where I need to upload my deliverable, the magic word. So let's say that I need to create personas, like representations of the market segments that we are targeting with our products. Yes, I can ask some AI thing to shoot, and then I'm going to have the typical persona template with, male, that age, blah, blah, blah. And I get stuff that I can upload in the system and claim I've done the job. But that's not helping me as a designer. What helps me as a designer is to get in a car or in a plane, go meet those workers that are installing antennas on top of a tower, and see how they do, and ask them what's going on, and ask them why they hate our current products. And do that in November in the rain, right? Trying to understand how they feel on Friday in the rain in November at 5 p.m., and they are on a tower, and the phone rings because their wife is wondering how soon they're coming home, right? You are not going to get that out of someone else doing it for you. If that someone else is a software, a person, I don't care. Getting it done is one thing, the deliverable. Doing it is another thing. Personally, I would rather not upload my document, but have the experience of talking to the real customer, the real user, and understanding what they're doing. So, of course, AI can be great. It can do a lot of stuff. It can do it super fast, sometimes better than us. I would say, especially if it's a task that you give it, right? You give a specific task, just like the calculator. There was a time when kids at school didn't have calculators, right? They had to learn how to do the calculus like painfully. And then there was like this big society debate. Is it okay to allow gymnasium students to have a calculator? They are going to stop thinking, right? So now you are in the next loop of that iteration. Like, I think you guys are going to stop thinking because you have tools that are so much more powerful than me that I'm like, ah! So I look at the calculator story. I know we did not all become completely stupid, so I'm hoping that we will adapt to that new super calculators that we have. That's super cool. For tasks, so when you have a calculator, you're the one in the physics exam who decides which formula you're going to use, and then you use the calculator to implement, to execute. And it's the same thing again. If you ask questions to AI without knowing what you're asking about, you are not going to know if the answer is valid. And that's dangerous for you. So you need the specialized skills, you need the domain knowledge, and you need to use the tools to get the best out of it. But don't just ask the tool to do something for you and go for a drink. There are also concerns, like when we talk about visual things, copyright. Like, I know a lot of people, like graphic designers and artists, photographers, and so on, who are freaking out because they know that their art is being used without asking them, without rewarding them, and so on. I'm not going to go much deeper in that debate, but it's a legitimate debate. Accuracy as well. We actually had that discussion today. Someone used some AI tool to give us some information on some science that none of us knows anything about. So we were very happy to have that summary giving us the key points to understand. And then there was like a list like this of sources that the thing had used. And one of my colleagues went through the list, and some of those lists were basically bloggers. How do I know if that blogger is competent? Maybe he is or she is, I don't know. But for you as a human who does research, you select your sources, you check, you try to find out how credible the source is. Maybe some of you are going to try to find out how credible I can be because you think I said nonsense. And that's totally okay. If you accept everything I say without wondering where did he get that from, you are taking a risk. If you accept that a software throws at you information and mixes in between academic research from MIT with bloggers, that's your problem. So please, please, please use it for what it's good at. Be careful that you are in control. Now, talking about in control and intentional, as I wrote here, expertise with flavor. What do I mean with flavor? Of course, when David and Tomasz asked to talk about artificial intelligence, I just looked at the words to start with. I thought artificial sounds like artful. And then I thought, intelligence, what is that? So according to the Cambridge Dictionary, it's the ability to learn, understand, and make judgments, and have opinions that are based on reason. So if we take learning as aggregating a lot of data and recording a lot of information, certainly those systems are able to do that. Are they able to understand? They are certainly able to find connections between things and correlations between things. So to some extent, I am totally open to say, yes, those artificial intelligence systems are able to understand some of the things happening. Are they the right people or the right entities to make judgment And can we claim that that judgment is based on reason? Perhaps. That's what I'm going to say. Of course, when I searched the definition of intelligence, I quickly went into the definition of stupidity, right? Because that's just how I am. And so the same dictionary says stupidity is the state of being silly or unwise. Anyone has heard of an AI tool giving a silly answer? So I asked myself, okay, if that super intelligent thing is able to be intelligent and also completely stupid occasionally, how does that happen? And there is a theory that I quite like. It's the Bonhoeffer theory of stupidity. It basically says that stupidity is a moral failure or the result of moral failure, and that moral failure is often triggered by social pressure. So in his study, the thing is during World War II, the guy is observing the behavior of the people in Germany, and he sees a lot of very intelligent people making the wrong decisions. And he finds out that it's not about intelligence, it's really about allowing yourself to make the wrong decision. And usually because you are under pressure, for example, the group, everybody says, oh, let's go there, let's go have a beer. Are you the one who's going to say, sorry, but I'm the one who goes home early because we have an exam tomorrow? Like a lot of people are just going to make the not so wise decision, right? So what makes us believe that a software that is using as a source the goulash of the internet, pre-2021, isn't there social pressure there? I mean, just look at the internet. Who are the biggest providers of input, like data, whatever that is, into the internet? Are you sure that all the regions of the world are equally represented? Are you sure that all the generations are equally represented? Are you sure that all the levels of education are equally represented? Are you sure that all the social classes are equally represented? So the source is way, way, way bigger than anything I could possibly read. That's a great quality. But that includes a lot of junk. So the question is, how are you going to deal with that? I can try to pretend to skip it, though I still have like 15 to 20 years in my career, so probably I can't. And I'm not really. But you clearly cannot skip it. You have to learn to deal with that stuff and make the best out of it. And I think the trick is going to be your moral compass that makes sure you don't become stupid. And your moral compass is also what I call your flavor. Your flavor is your culture. Culture, that's me saying, so we can discuss it in the pub later. Culture is the contextual or local definition of right and wrong. What you think is right and what you think is wrong, you learned it. You learned it from your parents, your grandparents, the extended family, the teachers at school, the neighbors, the context that was around you during your childhood. And that definition of right and wrong keeps evolving when you become adult and forever until you die. It keeps evolving based on your context. And as I said at the very beginning, I have been in a few contexts. So I was born in Belgium. I spent a total, not in one block, of 22 years in Belgium, 28 outside Belgium. So I'm not even a Belgian anymore because I've just been bruised or whatever, modified by everything I experienced, right? And it's the same for every one of us. So you, as a person, you are unique. You are the result of everything that has happened to you until now. You are the result of all the decisions you have made until now, and that has to be you. So as a designer, as an engineer, if I give you a job, it's to get your result. I want the outcome to come from you. Because if it comes from ChatGPT, I don't need to hire you. We agree on that? So I think it's in your own interest to know, learn, go find out, don't ask me, go find out how to leverage the best performance and qualities of those systems without hurting anyone. And keeping your flavor in the picture. Make it yours. Is this working? That's all I had to say about artificial intelligence. Now the magic wand, my flavor. So there are things that, even if you use all those tools we discussed before, there are things that people tend to forget. And I'll start with this. Let's say 2 kids want the last orange. We're at home, right? We're at home. There are 2 kids. They're fighting. They want that orange that is there. What do you think is the most predictable behavior of the mother that witnesses the fight? Anybody? What is she going to do? Sorry? She's going to cut the orange, right? And if she's a decent mother, she's going to give, like, as accurately as possible, half to each kid. Is that the best solution? Sorry? It depends. That's a very good answer. It always works. What do you mean?
Depends what the kids want orange for.
Precisely. So what if one wants the juice and the other one wants the skin, the peel, to flavor muffins? There's no reason to argue. There's not even a reason to share. You can do that business-wise, right? You are producing 50 tons of oranges per year on your property, and one company comes to you. They are a juice maker, and they make an offer. And another company comes to you, and they are candy maker or whatever, muffin makers. You can sell to both of them. You can even put them in contact, make a deal. I sell the oranges to that guy at a lower price, but he gives me back the peel, and that other guy accepts that he receives the peels without the inside of the orange, and he gets a good price for that, but instead of charging one time 100%, I charge 70% there and 70% there. You see? So, the assumption. The person who wrote the brief that you are reading made assumptions. And then you read the brief and you make assumptions. Right there, you are limited yourself twice, right? So go ask the guy or the lady what assumptions they made. Go ask them, when I read that, I assume you mean this. Is that correct? Can I also challenge that? Can we destroy that? Can we change supplier? Can we? Go debate the assumptions first, not the problem statement itself, the assumptions that are hidden behind it. An example, flood-proof house. If I tell you, I ask you to design a flood-proof house, what assumptions do you make? People are going to think that the house is, like a rock-solid thing that stands there, is not going anywhere. And we have to build trenches or walls or things around it. Well, if the house floats, you don't need to care, right? So take this, and then of course, when I say, make a floating house, like people are like, are you stupid or what? Like, you know how difficult that is? And then we are in a street downtown. It's not on a river. It's not a houseboat. It's a house between neighbors in a town. Cannot do that. Well, give me your email address. I'll send you a link of how they do in the Netherlands. There are people who have done that, to have a house that looks completely like a house with a garden and a terrace and everything. But when water comes in, the terrace is flooded, granted. But the house moves up. You just need to accept that the hypothesis that it can move is true, at least temporarily. So when you are in a debate, I've had it a million times, this needs to be bigger. Can we make it bigger? No, because if I make it bigger, it collides with that component, and the whole thing is stuck. And then I force the conversation. I'm like, okay, let's assume for a second it is going to be bigger. What are you going to do about it? And then suddenly we see that we can change those other components, right? So don't be afraid of dealing with untruth, like things that are not correct. You know they are not correct. Just take them as the premise of your thought process. Build your thoughts on that. And then if it goes nowhere, you know you're on the wrong path, move on to another attempt. If it brings opportunities, maybe it's actually going to make a loop that makes you see that that thing that was blocking you is not necessary. I had that in a job where we were palletizing bags of dog food and shipping those pallets of food to Japan. And the distributor in Japan was not interested in receiving food that was too close to the best before date, you know, eat before February, whatever. So they had put a system in place that in the harbor, they were checking the date on every bag. So they wanted us to palletize the bags in such a way that the date is on the outside so that they can see the date without completely undoing the pallet. Then when I started to talk about moving the best before date printing to another part of the bag, of course, the supply chain people told me, no, you cannot do that because Japan is not going to be able to check the date. And one of the problems was that Japan had started to do that because sometimes there were problems with the quality of the print. And they were getting bags where it was not readable. They didn't know what was the date. So they just started to put quality checks all over the place. But with the engineering team, what we were doing is we wanted to move the date to have 99-something% perfect print. So we were actually removing the cause of the problem. So eventually, we managed to convince the whole supply chain that they didn't need to put all those quality checks, that they could have less and somewhere else, and to make it happen. So don't take no for an answer. Be ready to go into the completely, what sounds crazy, but you can make it work. What if, I just said it, what if it is bigger? Why not? Why can't I do that? Give me a good reason. Let's assume for a second that it is like this. What are we going to do about it? Yes, if is a great, great, great answer. If you say no to a customer, you offend them. So you say yes, if. Right? Can you have it done next week? Yes, if you let me hire 10 people and you give me 500,000 crowns of budget for prototyping. That's a polite form for no, okay? But it's a polite form. In creativity, in creative problem solving, it's the same thing. Can we do that? Just don't say no. Just say, yeah, probably you could if. I mean, imagine people who try to colonize Mars. They deal with if quite a bit, okay? It doesn't stop them, right? So it's a negotiation. The moment people go, no, cannot be done, then it's an argument, it's not a negotiation anymore. The conversation can stop right there. Try to keep it going as a negotiation. I trade this for that. Of course, it's all very easy to do, right? If you have a good sense of humor, yes, it is. Make fun of things that's very easy to do. You have all been kids, so I know you've all made jokes before. You've all made caricatures of the teachers at high school. Don't deny it, I did it too, okay? So you have sense of humor. You are able to make jokes about yourself. You are able to make jokes about your work. You are able to make jokes about the work of your colleagues. Just don't offend them, right? But if you do it with a big smile and you make jokes, and you start by making fun of yourself, and then you make fun of the others in the room, this is the trick. Have fun. That's the trick. These are creative tools. All those tools work much better if you don't take it seriously. Now, I didn't say not to care. When I design, fall protection equipment, people are going to die if we do it wrong, so we care. That doesn't mean we are like stressed and panicking for 2 years during the development, right? We're having fun doing it. When I test stuff to try if I can misuse it, of course I have another system attached, right? I'm not suicidal, but I have fun. And like creativity, you were all born with the skill of having fun, right? You were all born with the skill of making jokes and pranks and caricatures. Enjoy trying. That's another thing. If you remember the business school students in the spaghetti test at the very beginning? They are scared of failing, and that's why they fail. So if you look at startups, 90-something, probably 99% of them don't manage to survive 3 years. Does that mean you're not going to try? If you enjoy trying, it's totally okay. If you need to win to be happy, you're not going to be happy many days in your life, I promise you that. If you can be happy by trying and failing and trying again, like the 4-year-old kids in the kindergarten doing the spaghetti tower, then you're going to have fun doing it. And you will achieve, like them, above average results. I hope to get questions and comments.
Questions? Despite the recommendation to drink water, there are a few beers.
If we don't have a problem to solve today, it's okay.
So you are invited to have a beer with us. It's not sure where. So if you would like to join us, then it means that you need to wait here to be decided later. So yes, discussion and questions. I can bring the microphone. Let me know who would like to ask. Who is from industrial design? Raise a hand. Okay, not all the people.
Not all of them.
You can speak Czech if you like.
Yeah, or Slovak.
Tanguy understands. Or Slovak. French, of course.
Or French. Swedish might work as well.
Do you have some experience with kind of tools like Tanguy was showing in his presentation somewhere else than in his workshops?
Come on, the 5 whys, tell me that you learned that at school. No? Engineering school, you don't learn 5 whys? Really?
Or the creative metrics?
The creative metrics, I don't know. That's maybe less common, but 5 whys. In engineering, isn't that common practice to ask yourself why something is happening and ask it 5 times to be sure you figured it out? Okay.
Okay. Who used such a tool like that? You use the Post-its and you place it somewhere with your ideas, working in the team, like somewhere else also, not in those workshops. Tomáš, you need to raise a hand. You see.
One thing, I'm not, of course, I do not own shares of 3M, so I'm not trying to advertise Post-it notes, and you can use any brand you want. The point is, what is great with this format, as I said, it's if you use a big fat marker, don't use a thin ball pen, right? It's forcing you to have very concise ideas, 4 words, 5 words, to really go to the core, the essential of your idea. What is also great is that you can move it around. So if you are trying to put things in a chronological order, of course there's a step you forget. That's okay. Just move those that need to be moved, put another one in between. So what I'm saying is that you can do the same in Excel if you want. Choose the tool you want. The important bit is the mindset. Keep things crystal clear in small blocks and allow yourself to move them around and connect dots.
this is interesting how the problem solving in groups are really, it's so rare in our culture maybe. At least as I recognize it from my own experience and from the school and from everywhere, like from all the projects. Most of it, we are not using that tools. We are using it in the projects focused more on the communication, let's say, where the communication is a little bit more important. So it's kind of beside of engineering. But anyway, if there is no question, I have one. You have? So
maybe I have a question. Did you learn by yourself, or did you learn at school?
Some of them, like brainstorming, I think I actually learned that at school in France. I remember being blamed for, yeah, it was, yeah. So we're talking 1993, okay? I have vague memory. But we were learning to brainstorm, and we were brainstorming on topic of designing toothbrushes. And one guy said, oh, what if it has only one hair? And I said, that's called an eraser. And the teacher got upset. If I had said, oh yeah, like an eraser, that would be good. But when I said with sarcasm, which is my flavor, that's called an eraser, that was perceived as negative response, which ruins the brainstorming. So I'm going to go back to my argument that if someone had written that on a Post-it, I would have had the opportunity to take a Post-it and write eraser, and I would not be blamed. Right? So that tool at school. Crazy 8, Honeywell corporate training for management, actually. Creative Matrix, Honeywell, but I think it comes from people who used to work at Microsoft and have joined Honeywell as design directors and so on. What else have I mentioned? I don't remember my own presentation.
Propelling.
The propelling question, definitely I learned that at Honeywell.
My favorite.
I learned it from Pete Holdcroft, who's now still global director of industrial or of design, of user experience at Honeywell Industrial Automation. And he worked in agencies in UK before joining Honeywell. I don't know where he learned it. So a bit of everywhere. And that's the whole story. That's the blue map with me flying around. You know, if I had stayed in Belgium, I would know a lot of things, but not those things. And maybe I would be a better person. I don't know. We will never know. But like keeping all those things that happen to you or that you witness top of mind, connect them, see how, you know, when I learned the creative matrix, for example, I was like, oh yeah, so it's basically brainstorming with this and these and these advantages, or removing some of the flaws of the brainstorming. If I had not learned brainstorming, you know, so there's a lot of things I don't remember where I learned it. I just bumped into it somehow.
Yeah, I asked before if you are asking us, or if we use it, or if we know about it, we can't be surprised we don't, because maybe our teachers haven't learned it before. No, so that's maybe the reason.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you are learning other things, right? Like you're not sitting doing nothing. It doesn't really matter at the end what tool you're using. That's, I guess, the message of this presentation. Don't use any tool blindly. You are all, I said that to all the students in the class. You are adults, right? You're grown-ups. You have the right to drive, to vote, to do military service, and you are adults. So you have the right to question everything that I'm saying. You have the right to do everything you want with what I'm saying. Just be intentional. Make sure that what you are doing is something you can stand for. Make decisions and live with the consequences of your decisions like we all do. And there is no such thing as this is the truth. This is not the truth. There is what are you going to do in that situation.
Maybe my question, that the example with the orange and
Yes.
splitting it or not splitting into, like it leads me to the question I'm thinking many times during our workshops and using those tools, that yeah, it's super clever to actually realize that maybe it's not necessary because you have the pulp and you have the what is it?
The peel?
The peel and the liquid.
Juice.
How it's called, juice. But in most time that you actually find out that it's anyway it's like as you was expecting on the beginning, that those kids will need to that they expect to have a whole thing, so you need to split it anyway. So that step, even if it looks like, yeah, it's like the enlightening moment that you have that option to solve it somehow, but what is the percentage where you actually use that idea? That's
Well, put it in the context of a design brief, right? So the kids are arguing and they say, I want the orange. That's the brief. I want the orange. That's what you get as a brief. And if you don't ask, why do you want the orange? What are you going to do with it? What do you expect to get out of it? What's the most desirable outcome? If you don't ask, then you are that agency that makes 3 concepts, and then another 3 concepts, and then another 3 concepts. I mean, I've literally seen people making 12 design proposals for a packaging, all of them radically different from each other. And I was just like, you expect me to present 12 packaging to the customer? I mean, someone in the room, either the customer or me, has to understand the market segment we are targeting. So certainly, we're not going to have 12 radically different concepts that are suitable for that market. You must question the brief. You cannot just do what you're told and then figure out that the guy who gave you the order didn't know what he was saying. I mean, you can try, but you're going to waste your life doing that, not achieving much. And I think the orange story is that. Don't just take the I want the orange as the brief. Go question it. Nicely, politely, not like me. But like, so if the mother would be like, what are you going to do with the orange? Do you really need the whole orange juice? Can you, is it enough if you get half a glass? If she asks that question to the kid who wants to do muffin, you know, the kid is like, what are you talking about? I just want to do muffins. And there is your solution popping. So you get a brief, question it. I'm not saying tell the teacher that he's wrong. I'm saying ask the teacher what they're really trying to do, what they really expect you to achieve. Don't ask them how they want you to do it, because that's part of the exercise, that you figure that out. So they won't tell you. But like, try to figure out what they're trying to achieve. You'll find out they're not trying to have yet another collection of essays on Word document with 5,000 words.
interesting how those oranges are useful, right? I have another example with that you have those two people, they both want orange, so let's skip that, and they are going to split it. So how you do it, right? If you split it and take one, the other one will always think that your part is bigger. So how to deal with that?
Yeah, but I'm older.
Yeah, exactly. And the nice solution is that one person split the orange and second person choose which half he will take. So it's interesting how to manage not only what they want, also the process of like distribution. Or
I must admit, I have a tendency to tell my kids, that's your problem, solve it together. Shit.
Alibism.
The problem is that, you know, in some of those situations, that kind of means it's always the same one who wins. Not less now, but like when they were smaller, you know, when they are like 6 and 8 years old, the 8-year-old has tendency to win all the battles. So that was not a good solution. But
maybe tell us something with those tools you using? You've been referring to the workshop with the falling thing, like that
Yes.
those themes. It was
The art of
flying
falling
paper.
slowly.
Yeah, out of in the vertical direction.
Yes.
So it was the team building workshop, or
No, it was actually the ancestor of this. So because of my role within Honeywell, I'm occasionally giving these kind of talks. And this was a first session that was only Brno engineers, and it was about creative problem solving. And actually, in that situation, I had a lot more of those tools. It was more pragmatic, let's say. There was no discussion about artificial intelligence. But I started the thing by entertaining them with the paper aircraft thing. And I think it was very interesting for them to do the exercise and because after that I showed them actually the TED talk about the spaghettis, and they could relate to their own behavior and see what was going on. So it was not a team building event, they all knew each other already, but it was to make them aware of their own behavior in problem solving.
I'm trying to imagine where those tools are like placed in the process of designing something. Like
they're not. So that this one is about.
I mean, any tool like.
Yeah, but like for example, you see about artificial intelligence. I went to check the definition of intelligence, right? And I think it's the same thing with the aircraft thing. Falling slowly and so on. I want people to literally look at the words that are given to you as a brief, go dig into those words. I know it may sound counterintuitive for an industrial designer, right? At the end, the device is stainless steel and aluminum and stuff. But first, go with the words. What are we really trying to say? What are we really trying to achieve? And then you understand better the problem. Of course, in the case of fall protection devices, the words is a nice thing. Meeting the guy who's using it is, of course, the most useful tool, right? We call it VOC or OVOC, voice of the customer. That's definitely the most useful tool. Meet the user, okay? If you are an architect and you make a house and you don't know the family that is paying for it, I think you have a problem, right? Meet the user. Do the job of the user. That's even better, if you can. Like, that's ideal. Because you need to understand the problem. But in which order I use those tools, I don't know. I design my process on the project, like depending on the time I have, the resources I have, the actual kind of brief or kind of topic. If you are designing shoes or a car interior, you don't have the same problems to solve and the same challenges and the same infrastructure and the same resources, right? So you design your process. I don't know if you are learning how to, like, if someone is teaching you an ideal process, I wouldn't, right? I would teach you a bunch of tools and try to show you through the years how you combine them based on the situation.
So usually it's in the process where decisions needs to be taken, right? About the direction of the project or something like that, right? So
well, designing is a decision-making process. That's
exactly.
That's only that. Like.
But you deal with the engineers too, right? You have those.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying I have the last word. I'm saying everything is about looking at what we have, make a decision. Okay, let's go this way, see where that leads us. And then, oops, doesn't work. Step back, let's try this way. Seems to work, it's expensive. What are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? Another anecdote. There was, back in the days when I lived in Sweden, there was a commercial on TV that like struck my mind. It was for mobile phone tariffs for the price, right? And they made commercial that probably today would not be acceptable, but back then what they did is that it was like a neighborhood and two families received their phone bill And in one, the phone bill is actually a person that is a dwarf that is fitting in the mailbox. And the other house, it's a huge guy, only his foot is in the mailbox. And they say, hang on a minute, you're a big bill. And the guy says, yeah, what are you going to do about it? And so I'm watching TV, half passive, you know, like it's evening. And just that commercial pops during the movie. I don't remember the movie, but I remember the commercial. I'm like, what are you going to do about it? Exactly. What are you going to do about it? Now I have it as a poster in the office. What are you going to do about it? Because I just had colleagues that kept complaining about a lot of things. And instead of solving the problem for them, I just made a poster that said, what are you going to do about it? The U is red and do is red. The rest is black, okay? So you do.
The hardest thing.
Yes.
Okay. So if there's no other question, or is it? No?
Nah, it's not
Maybe.
really a question.
Maybe later with the beer, it will be more easy. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tanguy.
Thank you for your trust.